Hi, my name is Pouyan Darian. I'm an immigration attorney and I help people get citizenship and green cards. That's all I do all day. So today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about whether or not someone who enters the US as a tourist on a tourist visa or in some situations on the ESTA visa waiver program for certain European nationals, whether these people can adjust their status in the US if they marry a US citizen spouse, or whether they have to depart, or whether they need a fiance visa. So the question I'm going to answer today is whether someone who enters the US on a tourist visa can adjust their status and just remain here. They don't have to depart, even though they entered with purely tourist intent. So that last thing I just mentioned, intent, is the key here. A tourist visa is a non-immigrant visa. That means that the immigrant is representing to the Customs and Border Protection officer and the consular officer when they went for their consular interview in their home country that they intend to temporarily visit the United States. And after a temporary brief visit, they're going to depart. And that is the key. That is why it is a non-immigrant visa, because they do not intend to permanently immigrate. Whereas if they were going to come here permanently, they would be applying for an immigrant, not a non-immigrant visa. So once they enter, they must have the intent to depart the United States. But let's say somebody enters the US, they've been talking on and off with somebody who they may consider their significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, maybe not even boyfriend or girlfriend yet. And then they enter the US with the intent to travel, visit, meet this person, hang out, and then leave. And then after they enter, they change their mind. That's fine. As long as at the moment of entry, they intended to depart. At the moment of entry, they had non-immigrant intent. Even the next day, if they changed their mind, no problem, as long as it was in good faith. So let's say they meet someone, a few months later they decide, hey, I don't really want to separate from you, this is meant to be, I want to get married, we decide we want to get married. You can get married and you can adjust your status in the United States without ever departing. But there are some caveats. It's not as simple as that. First of all, you cannot come to the US on a tourist visa with the intent to permanently reside here. That is fraudulent intent. And how can that be proven? So ways it can be proven is eventually you're going to go for an interview with your spouse to determine whether it's a good faith marriage, whether it's a real marriage and not some fraudulent sham marriage that you're engaged in just for the green card. And when you go for this interview, you can be asked questions that relate to your intent at the moment of entry. For example, if you had a good job in, let's say, Colombia or any country, right? You were a teacher there, you had a contract. If you were going to come here temporarily, normally you would ask them for some time off. Maybe you gave them a letter, or maybe they gave you a letter saying you have 1 month to come back and your job will be ready for you. That's great evidence that you intended to go back to Colombia and you had non-immigrant intent at the moment of entry. You had tourist intent because you have proof that you wanted to go back. Or maybe you have an active lease in your home country which you didn't cancel. Or maybe you have obligations like a dog or a cat and you hired a dog sitter for the 1 month you were going to spend in the US. That's all great evidence that you had non-immigrant intent. But on the other side, on the flip side, let's say you sold your house right before you came here on your tourist visa and you quit your job permanently and you wrote them a letter saying, I'm moving to the United States, and you got rid of all of your possessions. That's going to be a little difficult to explain if it comes up during the interview, because you clearly, it looks like you had the intention to permanently reside in the US and that you lied and said you were coming as a tourist. That is a huge issue. The key here is at the moment of entry, you had the intent to leave the United States. If you change your mind afterwards, that's okay, as long as it was in good faith. And those questions can come up on the interview 1 or 2 years later when your interview is finally scheduled. Right now in New York, where I represent a lot of my clients, the processing times for this is 17 to 30 months. So you might not have to explain yourself for years, but eventually it could come up. And if it was found that you entered with the intent to permanently reside, even though you came as a tourist, that will be a huge issue. Another thing to consider, if you do come here on a non-immigrant visa, such as a tourist visa, and you get married to a US citizen, you should not apply to adjust your status within 90 days, because if you do so, immigration, USCIS may take the position that you entered with the intent to immediately adjust your status. So if you do get married, I wouldn't make any decisions about adjusting status for at least 90 days. You can get married. Some people even come in on a tourist visa, they get married, and then they leave in full compliance with their tourist visa. Nothing is wrong with that. And actually, that is the more proper way to do things. That's the way I recommend doing things. But if you get married, and then 90 days comes and goes, and you decide, look, I can't be separated from my spouse, I love him or her, or whatever, way too much to be separated, I'm just gonna stay, you know, in that situation, we would file for your adjustment of status after 90 days to prevent any issues. Now keep in mind, that means you've entered the US, at least 90 days have passed, and then we're just filing the paperwork for the first time, and your green card and your work permit will be pending from that moment forward. Right now, it's taking up to 4.5 months from the moment the green card is filed until when we receive the work permit. So that is around 7.5 months from the moment of entry until you get your work permit and social security number. So that's just something to keep in mind, and that could really affect people's plans. And by the way, once we file the adjustment of status application, you no longer have non-immigrant tourist intent, and your tourist visa is canceled. So you can't even travel until you get your work permit 4.5 months later. So that's just something else to consider, and we can talk more about that if that's going to be an issue and you need to travel. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. I just wanted to explain some of these, because in the last week alone, I've received like 4 questions specifically about this, so I just wanted to address it. Again, my name is Pouyan Darian. I'm an immigration attorney. I put my website, my email, and scheduling link in the description below. You can schedule appointments with me by video, chat, telephone, or in person, and you can schedule it all on the website linked below. If it's a time-sensitive issue and you don't see a slot available because we're booked out for at least 1 or 2 weeks in the future, give us a call at 914-885-3961. I'll do everything I can to schedule you outside of normal scheduling hours to accommodate you. Yeah, and I do represent clients all over the United States and world, so the fact that you don't live in New York doesn't mean that I can't represent you. Anyway, with that said, I hope you have a great day and good luck with all of your immigration issues.